What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's time for a very angry rant about something that I personally think is becoming the cancer of gaming. A topic that's very recent, it's only come up in the last 3 years, and is already taking over almost every single aspect of development. Of course, I'm speaking about games as a service. A buzzword you probably don't hear very often, but one that absolutely drives me crazy. So, previously, if you were making a game, the idea was to try and sell as many copies as possible, maybe some DLC, and then move on with the next project. Pretty obvious, right? If something like Call of Duty sells well, or a tiny little indie project like, this new cool puzzle platformer, if those do well, of course you're gonna try and make more of those. That's not the case anymore. Instead, they want to do stuff like they're doing with Final Fantasy 15, where this game just keeps getting big updates. Now, that stuff being free on the surface seems good, but it's part of a more nefarious overall objective. These studios now have actually confessed to the fact that their new goal is to try and get you to keep playing their game and nothing else, to make it where you will only spend money on whatever they're making. This is why there's all sorts of stuff that they've now implemented into Final Fantasy 15 in their free updates, like daily quests and special events like the Assassin's Creed Festival. This is to make it where you do not want to stop playing the game. That way when the next big giant DLC update comes out, of course you have to purchase it. That's also why we are still getting giant stuff being released for this game almost 2 years after it initially came out. This has been out for quite a while now, and they've now officially stated we're going to be getting huge expansions to Final Fantasy 15 into 2019. This is driving me crazy because I feel like innovation just requires that you constantly try and change things up. Bringing in fresh ideas is the key to keeping us all interested. This is going to create stagnation on a crazy level. What really kind of started me on this whole topic and what made me start researching it is when I started reading about the fact that the people who are making Rainbow Six Siege have now officially stated that they have no plans of ever doing a Rainbow Six Siege 2. Everybody is still playing that game so much and spending so much cash on it, there is literally no point in trying to come up with a sequel. There is no point in trying to make something that's bigger and better because the current system just keeps selling. Now, the reason this drives me crazy is because I feel like some games are going to be killed by it. I feel like a game that was recently murdered by this is Paragon. Now, you may not have particularly cared for this game, and I'm not really a big fan of MOBAs in general, but that was one that had some really interesting and completely unique gameplay elements to it. However, they had a problem. The only way that that game was going to keep surviving is to constantly try and find ways to get players addicted to playing it. It wasn't about fun, it wasn't about being rewarding, it wasn't about cool giant story, it was only about trying to force the player to continue playing it. And so because of it, they ended up creating a lot of predatory business practices and overly long match types, all in an effort to try and keep you locked in and playing past the time when you normally would get any really enjoyment out of it. This is so annoying to me because I'm seeing more and more studios specifically talk about that they're actually aiming for this sort of business model. It can make money if you're able to survive doing it. Now, my worries are that this is all because of games like The Division. Ubisoft's shoot and loot RPG is sort of like an open world MMO with a lot more guns. But what's really unique about this is the fact that from the very beginning, they knew that it didn't have to work. They released that game quite broken with some horrible balancing issues and basically a cliffhanger ending. But it didn't matter because even from the very start, they knew that this was going to be a games as a service model. It didn't matter because they knew that the people who are still playing it were going to be the champions who would talk about it. So as long as they managed to patch all the messes later on, people would still be happy. This is something that they completely did with Final Fantasy 15. Now, I like this game pretty well at launch. In fact, I played over 100 hours of this now, but it's pretty easy to see that they didn't really mind how broken it would be at launch. They knew that enough millions of people were going to pick it up that they could just worry about stuff like, you know, continuity, graphics, a magic system that worked well. That didn't matter. You didn't even need to make it where all 4 of the playable characters were actually playable. Instead, they patched that in 9 months later. This is just the kind of stuff that's absolutely driving me crazy, and I hate it. Seriously, this is something that's absolutely driving me crazy, which is that so many studios now know that they can lean on the games as a service system. There's no longer this necessity to release games as complete as you can. This is because they know that there's this new sort of genre going on where people are a lot more accepting of broken games, and I feel like part of that is because of early access. People are growing so accustomed to the idea of a game coming out kind of meh and becoming great later. People are being more patient, but the times they're not are when decent games end up being sent out to die. Think of all the projects just in the last year that could have had amazing releases, but clearly ended up getting murdered by their own games as a service model. Honestly, this is completely just my own theory, but I absolutely believe that was what their intention was with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. The complete plan on paper was probably just release the game, throw it out there, let's see what happens. If it sells well, we make great cash and we keep updating it with DLC down the road. However, if it absolutely bombs, then who cares? We just chop off the finger, save the hand, move on, do a different fighting game. And because of it, they did not bother actually finishing that game. They didn't make more characters, they didn't give it any big draw and appeal. And because of it, a fighting game that could have been truly magnificent is now already dead just a few months later. Part of the reason this stuff is just kind of driving me nuts is the fact that it's such a recent thing. Whenever I'm playing all these remastered collections recently, like Shadow of the Colossus, which is a masterpiece, or playing through all the Kingdom Hearts games, it's almost kind of bizarre now to see games that are so finished. Each and every game in this collection is so, well, done. I can see exactly what they were trying to do. There's not really any DLC. There's tons of side quests. Each one of these games is so big, so deluxe, and so well thought out, I can't even imagine them patching that except for to try and fix a tiny glitch. I feel that same way about stuff like Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, which is still my favorite game in that entire phenomenal franchise. If they came out with that today, it would be a game that would sell 100 million copies just because it is so marvelous. And we're kind of in an age now where we expect a game to come out pretty bad. When I was ripping apart Metal Gear Survive, a lot of people told me, and I'm not even joking, hundreds of people told me, you can't expect a game to be great at launch. Why the hell would you ever say that? At what point in your maniacal brain do you think a game should, by expectation, release flawed? A game should come out as complete as it possibly can be and then just get better from there. No longer is this the expectation. At this point, every studio, it seems like, every massive company has been on record saying that they would rather make a game that's slightly flawed and as thin as possible and then reward you by fleshing it out later with paid content. These games want to try and get you hooked on playing, to get you addicted to the idea of just staying within that single world. That way you have more cash to spare when that next big paid patch comes out. This is a massive problem and something that I think could seriously damage the entire gaming community. Everything is built on innovation. Being able to do stuff that's fresh and different, whether that be with a sequel, a spin-off, or just some cool standalone DLC. But no longer is that going to happen. At this point, some of the most daring games that come out are sometimes just the weird RPGs. It's sad that I can't even really trust some indie stuff. Occasionally now it seems like even the smaller studios are trying to mimic the bad business that makes billions. But what do you think about all this? Are you actually playing any of these games as a service, and what do you think about it? Are you okay playing a game that only exists to try and get you addicted to it? And if so, well, let me know all about it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Seriously, Final Fantasy 15 is a decent game, but the fact that there have now been like 5 different festivals, a fishing minigame competition, there's screenshot competitions in this game now, all clearly built to just try and get you to keep coming back. Eventually, we do need to get a Final Fantasy 16. For crying out loud. Oh, hey! I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.